Christian, how are we?
Good, thanks. Excited?
Yeah, it should be a good session.
Mm-hmm.
Also, guys, just if everybody's attending, Christian's got some social media links at the bottom of there. That's a good way to keep up to date with what Christian is doing. So he's got his Twitter and LinkedIn there, so feel free to get them added on the social media platform.
Mm-hmm. Hello, everyone.
We'll give it a little bit longer. The attendees are still shooting up, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chat function, everyone, as well. So for everybody that's in here at the minute, there's a chat function where you can get your comments in there. So say hello, get engaged in the conversation. It's going to be a pretty interactive session, guys. So feel free to just discuss things between yourself or discuss things between us. There's a Q&A function as well. I'll jump into that a little bit in a little bit of time. But yeah, there's a Q&A function as well. So any questions that pop up while Christian's running through the session, feel free to jump in there as well, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Right, what time are we on? 12:02. Attendees is still popping up. We'll give it another minute, I think. Christian, do you want to give us a little bit of talk about just maybe this first page?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for joining, everyone. It's good to see technology evolving for 2020. So if everyone can see that first page that I've got up now, I've put together some resources about the talk today. So I'm going to mention some different technologies. The main technologies that I'll be talking about are Avalonia UI, .NET MAUI, Uno platform, and Blazor. So on my website there, I've put together a bunch of resources that I'll be talking about. I've also just launched an Introduction to Uno platform course on Udemy. So Adam's going to talk a little bit more about that today. But if you'd like to check out that course, that will give you a good starting point to get into Uno platform. Which is one of the technologies that I'll be talking about today. And also I've got my Twitter there. So if you'd like to stay up to date with any of the stuff that I'm talking about today, I will be tweeting about that going forward. And if you need to get in contact with me, if you'd like to talk about any kind of content that you need developed or anything at all, just add me on LinkedIn. I'm always available, and you should be able to message me through there. Otherwise, just check out my website. My website's just there, christianfinlay.com.
Perfect. All right, Christian, I think we'll give it enough time. I think we'll jump into it, mate. So thank you to all attendees and everybody who's joined us today. I'm Adam Close from Granite Consulting. I look after the software development practice here. As many of you know, I specialise within the Microsoft stack. We are joined by Christian Finlay today. Christian's going to be hosting our first .NET Virtual Masterclass. We're going to be exploring a few new technologies, Uno platform, Blazor, Avalonia UI, and MAUI, and how these technologies are going to bring .NET into the multi-platform space. Just want to say a massive shout out to Granite for purchasing 10 of Christian's Udemy courses. So we're going to be giving them away throughout the session, as I did briefly mention, mainly in the Q&A. So any questions that come through is a chance to win a Udemy course. So please get interactive, get engaged, ask Christian any questions that pop up. But let's get into it. I know there's quite a lot of content to cover, Christian. A lot of new technologies to explore. So Christian, do you want to give us a little bit of background on yourself? And then what you're going to be talking us through today.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for the opportunity. I've been working with .NET since the early 2000s, since .NET has first been around, and it's an interesting technology. .NET's a great technology. C# is a great technology. But before .NET, what was popular was Java. So Java was a purely cross-platform technology, and a lot of people will remember that Java started out with a cross-platform UI technology right from the beginning. This is something that C# didn't really have when it first came out. So eventually, .NET was ported to Mono on Linux and other systems, but it didn't necessarily have all the UI capability right out of the box from the beginning. So over time, a lot of different technologies have developed for cross-platform, for different platforms, for Linux, for macOS, and later phones. But this has kind of been an evolution. So today, I'm going to be talking about 4 of the different ones that are sort of surfacing at this point in time. There have been a lot that have come and gone. These are some of the more interesting ones at this point. So I'll do my best to give you a bit of a taste of these platforms at the moment, and show you some video of their capabilities, what they're able to do. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them on the Q&A section and let me know. And if there are any comments, you can talk as well. That's totally fine. So is everybody ready to go forward? Yep. Okay, cool.
Interesting.
Cool. So the first thing that everyone will probably understand right now is that there's no real one-size-fits-all solution for cross-platform apps on .NET. There are a lot of options, and there's nothing that you're going to be able to do that's going to be right for your business right at this point in time. There's a combination of different technologies. 3 of them are more geared towards phone and desktop, whereas one of them is pretty much purely web, which is Blazor. So hopefully what I can do today is just clarify what these technologies are about and what way they're going to fit based on what you're looking for at the moment. Okay, so they're kind of, as I said, they're kind of divided into two types of technologies: native apps and web apps. Blazor being web. And let's take a look at some of the approaches, and I'll also provide some learning resources for the different technologies that are out there. Okay, so Adam, have you got the first poll going?
Yeah.
Cool.
So there's a poll there, guys. You can vote. Start getting your answers in. We'll give you 30 seconds to a minute to get in there.
Cool. So I'll just mention this. So one of the things that's going to be, a deciding point for technology is, are the majority of your users casual browsers, or are they going to be a captive audience? So are you going into an organization, a large organization, and providing a solution, a system for that organization where they will install apps, or are you looking to capture audience through the web? So that's one of the core things that you need to decide. So Blazor is definitely one of those technologies that might be better for capturing an audience coming through the web. Okay, we've got Avalonia UI, which is a predominantly desktop cross-platform UI system. Uno platform, which is what I've been spending the most time with recently, and .NET MAUI. So .NET MAUI is an evolution of Xamarin Forms, mostly at this point. So a lot of people that have used Xamarin Forms will have some understanding of .NET MAUI. Microsoft will be continuing Xamarin Forms, but at some point, Microsoft will probably be expecting people to cross over from Xamarin Forms to .NET MAUI. So the key thing about .NET MAUI is that it will be moving to the .NET platform. So it won't be running on Mono, from my understanding. It will be running on the actual cross-platform version of .NET, which is .NET 5. Okay, so one of the decisions, as I brought up, is will you be going for a web application, or will you be going for a native application? So this is something that any team is going to have to weigh up. Okay, so you probably will be familiar with a bunch of different web technologies at the moment. Usually these days, these frameworks get lumped into the category of single page application. So most people are building web applications with Angular, Vue.js, and React at the moment. So these are the pretty common single page application technologies that people are using at the moment. And usually people are using it with TypeScript, also JavaScript. But Blazor gives a different option to be able to build those applications in C#, to build those in C#. So is everybody able to keep up at the moment? Have we got anything coming through? Everything's okay?
Everything looks all good.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right. On the other side, we have 3 technologies that are designed for providing native apps. So what I mean by native apps is that we compile these in .NET and they will run as a native app on the platform. So Xamarin Forms has been pretty much one of the pioneers in this space. Xamarin Forms has been around for quite a while now. It's owned and maintained by Microsoft. So that has kind of paved the way for cross-platform technologies. But in the recent few years, Avalonia UI and Uno platform have come into their own. They're both offering very good options for native apps. So we'll go into those a little bit further and we will talk about how those are changing the landscape. Okay, so these are the questions that you'll need to ask. So have a think about this, and if you haven't already, it might be good to answer this on the poll. So it's good to think about your current users, how you're currently dealing with your users. Okay, so that's interesting. So I'm just seeing at the moment that captive audience is at 79% and casual browsers are at 43%, which is a little strange, but we're seeing clearly that there's a captive audience. There's more of it's more on the side of captive audience. So for captive audiences, there's a suggestion there that native apps could be the way to go. All right. And so another thing that needs thinking about is, what is the skill makeup of your team? So if your team has been working with TypeScript, if it's been working with web, building web pages, then Blazor looks good. It gives your team something familiar that they've been working with, but it also allows people that have C# skills to build for the web. So if you've got a back-end team or a team that works mostly with more low-level C# and not so much with the UI, then the other platforms, Avalonia and Uno, .NET MAUI, they can offer a way to sort of leverage the existing skills that your team already may have. So it's not necessarily, you're not using the HTML DOM, for example. So you're not having to work with the web UI. It's more of a C# paradigm. So this is something else that you'll want to be thinking about. Okay, so another thing that's really important to have a think about is, what's the form factor, or where are the users going to be spending their time? If you're serving static content, if you are mostly just, you know, educating people coming by, reading information from a static page, then, you know, targeting the browser is obviously the most important thing. You want to capture as much of the audience that you can. But it's a good idea to be able to understand, you know, are your users spending a lot of time using desktop apps, or will they be using phones and tablets? That's a really important distinction. When it comes to desktop apps, if you're a data entry clerk, for example, a mouse and keyboard is going to be something that you spend a lot of your day using. So you'll want something that's optimized for those people. But if you're somebody who's perhaps works in the field, perhaps you're going out to, you know, document something, to go somewhere and record information about something out in the country or in regional areas or things like that, then the chances are you're going to be using a phone or a tablet. So this is an important distinction. Even if you were using Windows, for example, you're going to want to use something that works well on a tablet device, that's isn't optimized for a mouse and keyboard. You want something that's going to be a custom fit for a phone or a tablet. So that's something important to think about. Okay, and so here's something. Another thing that needs to be thought about is how mature does it need to be? Okay, so if you've already got thousands of users and you're going to migrate them to a technology, it needs to be stable. So this is something that you need to be careful of, obviously. If you're working on, let's say, an admin application for inside of your organization, let's say that you want to be able to modify notes for your team, or share information within your team, or track progress or something on some work within your team, then you can afford to have a little bit of experimentation with the platform. If that's not an option, then you just need to be careful to make sure that the technology has been tried, has been around for a while, and is going to provide that level of stability for you. So the technologies that we're talking about today, they're pretty bleeding edge. So the main point I would say about any of these technologies, the point of advice that I would give to everybody is to try them out and to prototype them, to make sure that you test to make sure that they actually meet your needs, and that you use them on the devices that you're actually intending on using them. Okay, so is everything okay at the moment? Is everybody's getting this? Okay, cool. So these are the two main native platforms at the moment. So we've got Uno platform and .NET MAUI. Again, .NET MAUI is a evolution of Xamarin Forms. Okay, so if you are currently using Xamarin Forms, if you currently have a mobile app built with Xamarin Forms, the next step will be moving your application to .NET MAUI. Unfortunately, it's only in preview stage at the moment. The main platforms that have traditionally been around for Xamarin Forms have been iOS and Android. There is some support for UWP or Windows 10. So UWP is the main Windows 10 style interface. And the good thing about UWP is that it will run well on a tablet. So Surface tablets and things like that, it'll be very optimized for those, which is good. Xamarin Forms also does target macOS and Tizen devices. And there's a little bit of support for WPF, which is an older Windows platform. So that could possibly be useful for situations where you want to target desktops that are not Windows 10. So for example, Windows 7 or some of these older platforms. So again, it's important to make the distinction between Xamarin Forms and MAUI. Xamarin Forms has been around for several years now. It has the backing of Microsoft. The Xamarin Forms team is a team at Microsoft, and they're currently working on bringing Xamarin Forms onto .NET 5. And that is what I understand is the main point of MAUI is to take Xamarin Forms and put that on top of .NET 5, which is what a lot of people will understand, that .NET 5 is all about bringing the one architecture to all of the different platforms, to Linux, to Mac OS, but more importantly to iOS and Android. At the moment, Xamarin is really backed by Mono, and Mono runs on iOS and Android at the moment. But Microsoft will be basically more or less replacing that with .NET, is my understanding. Okay, so one of the things that is important to all of the native desktop technologies that I'll be talking about is XAML. XAML is a great tool for declaring UI. Has a little bit of similarity to HTML for people that are not really familiar with that. XAML has been around for a very long time. It started with the WPF technology, which is one of Microsoft's desktop technologies. I personally really like working with XAML applications. And if you're going to be using Avalonia or MAUI or Uno, you will be working with XAML. All of these platforms tend to work well with the MVVM pattern. If anyone's heard about that, that's a pretty popular design pattern for building UI. And MAUI is one of the platforms that works very well with MVVM. XAML and MVVM go together very well. So that does allow, to some extent, also something I should make a point about that is if you follow the MVVM pattern, it allows you to separate the logic of your UI from the physical implementation of your UI or the view itself. So if you're careful about the way you design your code, you can actually separate that logic so that it could be used across Xamarin Forms, MAUI, Xamarin Forms, Uno, and Avalonia. So that's a possibility if you go down that path. Okay. One of the distinctions about .NET MAUI versus Uno is that it takes the native look and feel by default. It doesn't make a strong attempt to style the controls in a consistent way across the platforms. This can be a strength or it can be a weakness of Xamarin Forms. Depends on how you look at it. If you create an app in Xamarin Forms, the layout will be similar across iOS and Android, but the controls will look like the controls on that native platform. I'm not sure what the plan is for that on MAUI, but on Xamarin Forms, that's the case. Basically, what you get out of the box depends on the platform that you're running it on. This is contrasted with Avalonia and UI, Avalonia and Uno, which I'll get to. But it's an important sort of feature about Xamarin Forms and MAUI is the native look and feel. Okay. So to the best of my knowledge, Xamarin Forms and MAUI, there's no official plan to target browsers. So if you build a Xamarin Forms app today, I don't think that there's a way to target the browser necessarily. I don't think that there's an official Microsoft line on that, or whether they will or won't support it. I'm not really sure. I would have to guess that eventually MAUI might target browsers. But at this point, you wouldn't be able to develop a web app with MAUI at this point, or Xamarin Forms. Okay, and it is an open source platform. You can contribute, you can log issues, and you can submit pull requests for Xamarin Forms and MAUI. Okay, I'll just show you a little bit of a video. This is Xamarin Forms. This is not MAUI. But this is creating a Xamarin Forms app from scratch on a Mac. Okay, so this is running on iOS. For those who haven't seen, this is what XAML looks like on Xamarin Forms or MAUI. And what we see here is the hot reload functionality. So you can change XAML, and on the fly that will get rendered into the application that you're debugging. Okay, we'll switch over to Android. So this is just demonstrating how easy it is to get started. There's nothing, I don't have any special components installed or anything in Visual Studio to be able to do this. These components come out of the box with Visual Studio if you install the cross-platform functionality. So again, we see the same thing. So this makes, this is a pretty good piece of functionality because it allows you to change the UI on the fly as the application is running. You don't have to stop and restart it, which is pretty important. Okay. One little thing about MAUI, there's something that a lot of people are talking about right now, which is the MVU style. You can see up in the top right-hand corner, this is more like web style programming. So this allows you to mix and match code within the one page. So it allows you to not only write XAML separately, but it allows you to mix the UI declaration with some code. So this is something, this is kind of an experimental part called the mobile Blazor bindings. It kind of mixes Xamarin Forms with Blazor. It's a little bit complicated, but what my understanding is that this is Xamarin Forms, but it has the Blazor syntax. So for web developers, this is also another piece of functionality that might attract some web developers to Xamarin Forms. Okay. Do we have any questions about that at the moment? Or okay.
I think there's maybe one or two in the chat, Christian.
Yep.
I think there's a few coming through on the Q&A as well.
Yeah, and so there is a question there about the opposite of MVVM. Yes, my understanding is this is kind of the opposite of MVVM. Yes, so it's a design choice. So you would choose the MVVM pattern, or you would choose this style, which I think they're calling MVU at the moment. Okay. All right. So let's see. And so just to be clear about this, this style of programming, this is Xamarin Forms, but it has the style of Blazor. It's not Blazor, but it has the same style of programming as Blazor. Okay. So go to the next slide. Okay. So we've got two platforms in the native mobile space. So we've got .NET MAUI and Uno. Back to that again. Now let's talk a little bit about Uno. Adam, if you could start off the next poll, that would be good.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so just a little bit of a icon for my course there. So if anybody wants to learn Uno platform, you can check out this course on Udemy. Okay. So what Uno platform does is it brings UWP or WinUI to other platforms. There is some crossover with Xamarin Forms or MAUI. But if you've used UWP, which is the Windows 10 user interface, then what this allows you to do is to take those kinds of applications and run them on a mobile device, iOS, Android, or in a browser. And this is something that I think is pretty exciting because Microsoft has not, Microsoft did not create this technology. This technology is created by Inventive. So to answer the question there, yes, it is non-Microsoft, but Microsoft is behind this technology. If anybody was watching during the Build conference, the UWP or the WinUI team did talk about Uno platform, and there is collaboration going on between Inventive and Uno in that space. Okay, so the main platforms are iOS, Android. UWP is not Uno, so if you're using Uno UWP, that's just normal Windows 10, but the code is compatible with UWP or Windows 10. And the other platform is browser. So I think this is one of the big things about Uno platform is that it has a lot of the same sort of functionality as Xamarin Forms or MAUI, but the difference is it comes with browser support right now. You can run it inside the browser. And there is support for macOS. I've had some difficulties with it, but macOS support is getting better. I think there's a lot of fixes for macOS in the most recent version. Okay, I'm just going to show you a little bit. So I've got a question there about what an app would look like if it target all platforms. This is a perfect intro, actually. This is an app that I'm actually working on at the moment. I didn't build this app, but I am working with this company, Chorus. They have been building an app on Uno platform, and we can give you just a little bit of a look. This is actually the application here. So you can see here that the user interface is very slick. This is running on 2 phones. All right. But this is the UWP version. So this is what the application looks like on Windows 10. As you can see, there is very, very good support for UI across all the different platforms. So that's only a little bit of a taste of what Uno can do. But you can see there that the UI actually does look the same across the platforms. When you build something in Xamarin Forms, you can get the application to look the same across 2 platforms, but there's often a lot of work involved with doing that. With Uno platform, the approach that they have taken is with lookless controls, so that from scratch they take to some degree the rendering, the responsibility for the rendering of the controls. Xamarin Forms does not do that. Xamarin Forms uses the controls on the native platform, and it looks the way the native platform looks. Okay, again, there's my course. Okay, again, Uno platform uses XAML. Okay, so one of the things that's important to talk about here is the flavor of XAML. If you've used WPF, Silverlight, or UWP, Uno's XAML is most similar to that XAML. Xamarin Forms has a little bit of a different flavor of XAML. So Uno will be very familiar to people that have been using these technologies in the past. You're going to find that this will be familiar. Okay, as I've mentioned, it has a common look and feel by default. So it takes the look and feel of Windows 10. This is the important thing about Uno platform. It's what a lot of people were wondering when UWP first came out. When UWP came out as a technology for building apps on phones and tablets, people were wondering, okay, this is great. UWP is great, but how do we get that onto other platforms? How do we get that onto iOS? How do we get that onto Android? And how do we get it into a web browser? Most companies want to be able to get their application into a web browser. But if you start with UWP, you just don't have that option. Uno brings that into the web browser and onto those other platforms. Okay, and it supports the browser through WebAssembly. This is an important thing to talk about for Blazor and for Uno. WebAssembly is the latest. Well, it's been around for a few years now, but it's the technology that allows C# to run inside the browser. Okay, and Uno platform is open source, and it's owned by the company Inventive, which is a Canadian company. So again, you have the security of using an open source platform, which means that it exists, it has a community, has a lively community, and you can submit pull requests and log issues with them on GitHub. Okay, so in terms of maturity, overall, there are some parts of Uno that are maybe not as mature as Xamarin Forms, but it's definitely ahead of MAUI at this point. Again, MAUI is not released. There is no release at the moment for MAUI. So we're still kind of in the halfway mark between Xamarin Forms and MAUI. And it could be quite a while before MAUI actually is ready to be used for production or anything else. So I would give it a pretty good solid score in terms of maturity, especially on iOS and Android. I find that most of the functionality that I've come across on Android and iOS both work well on Uno platform. Okay, and there's a course there, obviously. Okay, so I'll show you a video. I'll show you a similar video to the Xamarin Forms one. This is creating an Uno platform solution from scratch. Okay, this is Visual Studio on Windows. Okay, you have to have the Uno templates installed, so that's an extension for Visual Studio. So yep, I'm going to show some browser support for Uno. So I've just pasted in some XAML there. You can't see the XAML that I've pasted in, but this is the same XAML that I'm going to be using for Avalonia as well. That was just a piece of text that I've pasted into the page. which defines the UI. So this is UWP. This is vanilla Windows 10. This is how the code looks on Windows 10. So that was just text. That UI is just written with text. There's no code. There's no C# for that. That's just done with binding. And that shows some of the power of XAML. I'm a big fan of XAML. And this really does bring the power of XAML to these platforms. Now we see the Android version. Okay, so it's exactly the same. Okay, now we see it within a browser, within Firefox. So we just run the WASM version, WebAssembly version of the app in Firefox. Okay, and again, we see the same thing. So you can see that it even looks like a Windows 10 application, but you can style it any way you like. And XAML has really, really powerful functionality for styling the application. This is something that is a real strength of XAML, but especially on Uno platform and Avalonia, because it renders the controls and you can really take charge of the styling. So this is the iOS version. Okay, cool. So yeah, any questions about Uno platform from there or any of those demos?
I think there's a few popped up.
Oh, yep. Yes, Uno is open source. The main way at the moment of sharing code with Uno platform is with a shared project, shared Visual Studio project. I'm not sure if that is the full thing, but the code is shared. And I find just out of the box, it seems to me that the code you end up with more shared code in Uno than I have had with Xamarin Forms in the past. So it works very well. In the next couple of days, there's going to be, well, in a couple of days, UnoConf is going on. There should be a link there. Okay, sorry about that. There we go. So unoconf.com. Okay, that's something that you should check out. There are some seminars, and you'll be able to get in contact with people from Inventive and have a chat about Uno platform. Okay. Cool. Just want to have a look at something. Oh, sorry, I'm not getting a mouse cursor at the moment. Okay. Adam, if you could run the other poll. So here we go with a comparison between Blazor and Uno platform. So it's not so much of a comparison, but these are the main two technologies that we have in the web space. If you're coming from a web background, if you have built TypeScript and JavaScript apps, single page applications, Blazor is going to be a kind of an obvious pathway there. The other background you may have come from is from an MVC background. You may have come from that kind of background that is not a single page application, but nevertheless, you're going to see some kind of crossover between ASP MVC and Blazor because they have a similar syntax. Okay. So the number one number one thing, the number one feature of Blazor is it brings C# to browsers instead of JavaScript and TypeScript. That is the selling point of Blazor. So if your team is a web team that has been working in TypeScript, perhaps this is a good path for you, because it may allow web developers as well as back-end developers to be able to share some of the coding. It might mean that some of the back-end developers that haven't been able to work with TypeScript might be able to dabble in a little bit of Blazor to fix bugs here and there. So it supports all modern browsers. Anything that supports WebAssembly will support client-side rendering. So there's two rendering models, or should I say hosting models. There's client-side rendering, client-side hosting, and server-side hosting. For the client-side, the browsers need to be a bit more up-to-date. But for server-side, you can work with Blazor if the clients don't necessarily have the latest browsers. It started out as an experimental technology within the last couple of years. It just sort of came out of nowhere from Microsoft, but it is gaining traction very, very quickly. And it seems as though Microsoft is putting a lot of weight behind this technology.
I'll just quickly jump in there, Christian, as well. Thanks for all the questions that are coming through, guys, on the chat. But if we can throw them in the Q&A, it's a little bit easier for Christian and myself to keep track of them. So keep the questions coming in. But if you keep them in the Q&A, Christian can answer them when he gets a second.
Yep. So I'm going to get to graphs and charts in a second. So yeah, I mean, any team is going to have a makeup of both web and back end. I mean, most people these days will be doing some web, some back end. It's about a question of emphasis. If your application has an emphasis on web, then Blazor is probably going to be a good choice over say Uno platform, for example. If most of what you do most of the time is building web pages and working with TypeScript and JavaScript, Blazor might be a pathway for your team. But if your team has spent all their time doing C# and they've never touched TypeScript or JavaScript, Blazor may not be the right choice. Uno might be another option in that space. So so just on single page applications in general, I can't predict. I can't say whether Blazor will fully replace the existing technologies like React, Angular, and Vue.js. But we're seeing that they're quickly getting a lot of take up. Blazor's getting a lot of popularity. So especially when the performance issues are dealt with. So I'm going to get to that in a second. I think they may actually be able to compete with the other SPA frameworks. Right? So I just mentioned the server-side rendering. So Signal, what this does is it means that when someone hits the web page, they're not using WebAssembly. When it's server-side, the HTML is rendering on the server, and then that is just being sent back to the client. So the client is still acting as a thin client. Okay. Now, WebAssembly, as I've mentioned for Uno platform and for Blazor, is currently a little bit sluggish. WebAssembly.NET sits on top of WebAssembly at the moment. And you can see a little bit of sluggishness with applications. There is what promises to give a lot of performance boosts, something called ahead of time compilation. That's coming on both Uno platform and Blazor. I believe that Blazor was able to achieve it, and I believe you can set that up in an Uno project by doing a little bit of configuration. this should be a lot faster. Some people are saying between 10 or 20%, 10 and 20 times faster than the existing WebAssembly code. So potentially we could see technology that's even faster than JavaScript inside the browser. So that's what I'm really hoping for on both counts as far as Blazor and Uno are concerned. That's where I'm hoping that it will go. Okay. All right, so a lot of people have seen the Blazor samples. This is one that I came across, which is a little bit different. What a lot of people haven't seen is being able to bundle up a Blazor application inside. Oops, I'll just go back there. What a lot of people haven't seen is the ability to bundle it up with something like Electron. Electron allows you to bundle any kind of web application with a web view and run it as a native app. So you could install it as a native app. For some reason this keeps pausing, but I'll just play it through. It's paused again. Okay, so the command line that I just called, it was just one of the templates. I'll get that going. Okay, so here we're just running the Blazor sample inside the browser. And this is probably what most people have already seen. People have probably seen this. It's a pretty common sort of demo. I'll go back to that. Okay, but what people probably have not seen is it being bundled up inside of a shell here. So this is the same Blazor application running on an Android device. That's running in a web view. And this was easy to get running. This is in part of the resources, so you can run this sample yourself. And that's what the code looks like for Blazor. Some people wonder about whether Blazor will last. It's tough to say. I can't predict, but what I can say is that it's very popular at the moment, and there's a lot of momentum behind it. I think it's here to stay, but we'll have to see how things pan out. Okay, so a lot of people are asking about controls and functionality. What I have seen is from Telerik at Progress Software. They have a set of controls for Blazor at the moment. I haven't got a video of the controls at the moment, but if you contact the Progress team, they also provide training on Blazor as well. So they offer a package in terms of controls and training for the Blazor platform. So I can't point you to a resource right now for the training part, but if you get in contact with me, I can find out more information. I can get back to you when I have that information from there. Okay. All right. So I will get to the next technology. So as far as desktop technologies are concerned, we have Avalonia and Uno. All right. So for people who are WPF oriented, Avalonia is perfect. Avalonia is basically a port of WPF onto cross platforms. So it runs in Windows, Linux, and macOS, as far as I understand. So this is in some ways similar to Uno platform because it will be the XAML style will be familiar to people that use Uno. Main platforms: Windows, Mac OS, Linux. iOS support is coming. It's not available as of right now, but I'm told that it's pretty much ready to go, and it's quite mature. It's a port from WPF, so most of the functionality that's in WPF now comes with Avalonia UI. Okay. Again, XAML. So one of the features of Avalonia, which is similar to Uno, it uses lookless self-rendering. So Avalonia takes care of the rendering altogether. It doesn't put the rendering back onto the platform, and all of the controls and things that are on Avalonia UI, they are rendered by the UI engine. Okay, there's no browser support at the moment, but I believe that's coming. Again, it's open source. And I'll run a little bit of a demo. So this is a very similar demo to what I showed of Uno. So yeah, so a lot of people talk about hybrid apps. Avalonia is a pure native app, purely rendered on the native platform. It doesn't use the HTML DOM. So some people may prefer working with the HTML DOM, and a lot of apps are moving that way. But personally, I still like working with XAML. And we saw that with Uno and with Avalonia UI. So that's a UI that's running. And this is the same XAML that I took from Uno platform. And as you can see, it's actually compatible. So that same XAML just runs across the two platforms. You can see that Avalonia UI and Uno have a lot in common there. Okay, so the rendering is very, very slightly different, but the idea is exactly the same. And the same thing runs on macOS, which is one of the features of Avalonia, is that it works well on macOS right now. If you want to target macOS desktop, it's very good. And I haven't tried it, but I believe it's just as good on Linux as well. Okay, so there we go. So from the background, so now we've got Avalonia, Uno, and WinUI, which is basically UWP. These all come from a common background. So if you're going for phone and desktop with XAML, Uno and Avalonia are a good choice because they come from the same background. .NET MAUI is a little bit of a it's a little bit different. It has a bit of a different background to these platforms. So just finishing up right now, a couple of extra choices. So if anybody's used Silverlight in the past, there is now OpenSilver, which brings the Silverlight engine into the web browser again. This is something I could probably talk to people about a little bit later. And there is another technology called Qt, which is a C++ engine. And QML.NET brings that to C#. So that is also another good platform, but I haven't delved into that very much. And the last sort of note to leave things on is C# the right choice for a cross-platform application these days? You do have a lot of options at the moment. So sorry if anybody needs to get going, but there are alternatives such as Flutter right now that are looking pretty good as well. But personally, my take is that given that we have Uno, Blazor, Avalonia, and Maui, I still believe that C# is a great choice. And there is so much coverage that you've got right now on the different platforms. And there's so much that's compatible across the platforms between those. So I think that if you do have to target a few different platforms such as web or phones and so on, you're going to be able to get a lot of that code share going on with C#. Okay, so have we got any more, anything else at the moment that we would like to finish off with?
There's a few questions in there. Anna, just on your question about to get a recording, I understand we are running a little bit over. There will be a recording going around, guys, so I'll get that sent out. I'll also I know somebody was asking about the links, the Christian's blog and his course. I'll also get them sent out in a follow-up email to all the attendees, so you'll have all the information dropping into email over the next day or two. There's some extra questions for anybody that does have a few more minutes. That Christian, I don't know if you want to move into the Q&A.
Just try and go back over some of the other questions. There was one question about Blazor Electron. That's a good question, whether or not it's using WASM. I'm not 100% sure of that one. I'll have to confirm that one. I'll try to put that up on the resources page. So I'll go back to the first page. So if you bookmark the resources page, I will be able to put some updates on there, and I'll also put a link to any of the video or anything else that we come up with from there. There's a question about community support. So that's a very good question. Blazor, I think, is probably leading the way in terms of community support. As I said, Telerik has an offering, a big suite of controls for Blazor. Also, Uno has recently come out with some controls and charts and so on. I don't have a demo of those at the moment, but I will try to put those back up on the resources page when I get hold of those. Okay, so I think, what else have we got here? Modern web view inside the platforms, not 100% sure how that works, but I'm pretty sure that the platforms, whether it's Uno or Maui, they take on the web view of whichever platform they're running on. So my understanding is that any of those platforms will have a modern web view, so you will be able to host other apps within a web view of those native apps, as far as I understand. So is there any more questions at the moment? Can we get the polls up by any chance? Or?
Yeah, I'll bring some of them results up. Just in regards to the 10 free demo courses for Christian's course on Uno platform, I'll be reaching out to the 10 individuals who won that. After this, I'll reach out to you all individually. I'll give you a call or drop you an email. Now, the poll 3, Christian, is that coming up?
Yep, cool.
The makeup of the team.
Yeah. So again, I think what I'm seeing here is that the audience that I'm talking to has probably had a lot of background working with C#, and you're probably coming from a background of knowing C#, probably exposed to XAML and things like that. So the native side instead of Blazor may be a better choice. I can't say for sure, but it seems to me, my gut feeling and from talking to people, if you do have a web background, then Blazor is going to be the path forward. But I'm sort of feeling as though the industry might be swinging a little bit back towards native apps, back to Maui, Uno, Avalonia UI. I think it's opening up, and I think it's a time for XAML to be looking at XAML again. And I think that people that do know XAML and that are learning XAML are probably going to have more presence in the working area as well. That's my gut feeling. I think that things are headed in that direction. So sorry if I didn't answer anybody's questions here. I tried to answer everybody's questions.
And what we'll do is, Christian, if I am just slightly cautious of time and people having to head off, what we can do is, if there is anything, Christian, we'll stay on. And if there's any other questions, as I say, you get them added to your blog and you can kind of answer them potentially that way. I'll shoot the link out to everybody so they can engage and interact any further with you, Christian. We'll definitely jump on Udemy and have a look at Christian's course. Maybe give us a few minutes just in case you do win one of the 10 free courses on behalf of Granite Consulting. And yeah, thank you very much, Christian. I know we had quite a few comments in there saying how great the session was. So thank you very much for that, Christian.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
It was a fantastic session, really. A lot of great content in there, mate.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, everybody. As I say, I'll shoot an email out so everybody can you've got all the links and you know all the places to go. But everybody have a good day. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you.
Thank you.